Greetings again, brothers and sisters within the Kingdom of England, Empire of Albion, as well as the Kingdom of Aryan, also known as Ireland today. And I'm just trying to get the stream right back up. Seems like that I got disconnected from the last one. So, excuse me. So once again, today is April 15th, 2976 of the Berber calendar, which is equivalent to the 2026 Gregorian calendar. Like always, we love to say here, it is a beautiful time to be alive. I have to give honors to our divine father, also our divine earthly mother, our king, our queen today. I have to give honors to our trustees, to our officers, to our heirs, to our humble brothers and sisters, to those who are doing righteous deeds all the time, wherever they are, as well for those of you who are putting on the good fight to do whatever you can to keep your head afloat, especially during these trying times that we're living in. We all have a duty to do, an obligation as humans on this planet. And one of that duty and obligation is to remember our origins and where we come from. So therefore we can get back in order and be able to bring harmony and balance back onto this planet once again. So today is going to be a day we're going to be reading it within the book called The Irish Origins of Civilization by Michael Tsarion. And it's crazy, I've tried to read or I try to do this stream multiple times within the last few weeks, and it just finally starts seeming to work in my favor tonight. So I'm going to do the best I can to try to get through this stream, and hopefully you can be able to follow along and understand what it is that I'm trying to convey, as well as what the author is trying to convey. I'm going to go, like I always love to do, I love to go to the author's website, so therefore that you and I can get an idea and understanding of who is behind the words and the investigative mind that we're going to read in today's book. And for those of you who are just now having an opportunity to check out the channel, The Noble House of Belmont, welcome. Hopefully you also someone who interested in understanding our historical ancient past, and pretty much jumping straight in where our predecessors pretty much left off from the time which we know nothing about. So once again, we're going to go to Mr. Tsarion's website here momentarily. Go back up to the top. Okay, so Michael Tsarion is an Irish author, researcher, and public speaker. And once again, it's always good to get an idea of who's actually, who's writing these books. So that way we have better understanding of how their mind works and where they're getting, where their background, is coming from. I want to say all the time gives them the credibility that we maybe look for. Sometimes we don't look for folks who have a scholarly background. It's just good to know, so that way we can be better aware moving forward in the book. So once again, he says he's raised in Belfast, Northern Ireland during the height of the Troubles. Michael began his revisionist studies by analyzing subliminal images in pop videos, billboards, and magazine ad copy. He also began studying criminology and satanic cults after a spat of bizarre ritualistic murders occurred in Belfast in the mid-1970s. Okay, so we can see so far from there, just based off of reading the first paragraph, that he's not only interested in issues that's taking place within his locality, but also too into topics that many people today themselves want to dabble into, which is satanic cults. And then the fact that he's interested in studying criminology, which we know that back then a lot of crimes were taking place in the 70s, which would, I can see why he would be interested to know and see how these two may be in tandem with each other. And I'm not saying just based off of that first paragraph that's what it's saying, but I can see that they can exist, in regards to him being interested in the two. After twice visiting the United States in the early 80s, Michael ventured out into the field to make a close study of Ireland's numerous ancient Cyclopean ruins and megalithic sites. This research proved invaluable and provided him with clear evidence of a hidden hand at work behind academia, religion, and the socio-political world. All right, so if we can just see, we just read, because I know I read this before, but he visited the United States, so he had to come to the U.S. And during this time, he had to have seen something here that sparked his curiosity to want to study Ireland's ancient ruins, and then for him to be able to put two and two together and see that there's a hidden hand behind how the information we're getting from school, or how academia relaying it back to the people, how religion, is not sharing the truth to their congregation, to the masses, which all of these things are part of the construct that holds our society together. So if there seems to be a hidden hand that's pretty much falsifying what it is that we are accepting as the truth, then this means that we need to start uncovering why is that happening. And as we can see, Mr. Tsarion has done that in regards to having these interests of the past of Ireland, as we're going to find out. So it says, his interest in Ireland's past was chiefly inspired in 1978 by the music of Andy Irvine and by Irish artist Jim Fitzpatrick, author of the outstanding Book of Conquest. Jim has since complimented Michael on his works. Brought up by staunchly Marxist parents, Michael became intimately aware of the fraud of socialism from an early age. He was also convinced that the story of the First and Second World War had been utterly misconstrued by the media. The calculated destruction of Celtic, Germanic, and Nordic culture remains his central interest. Pause. All right, so he has what would they say a conspiracy theorist mindset, or they would probably say a conspiracy theorist in this case, based off of him questioning the narrative from a few historical events that happened, or of course many of us alive today weren't around when it happened, but nevertheless this is what happened based off of our historical accounts from the predecessors who have come and gone. Also, for him to see that there was some a calculated reasoning in regards to them destroying the Celtic, Germanic, and Nordic culture, so I would say a lot of historical or ancient cultures that were destroyed that we only talk about or hear in these books, why a lot of that their relics, or why was it destroyed? Why was the old world destroyed, and why was they calculating the destruction, how they're doing it? So if they were calculating, that means they were either choosing when they were going to remove it, or what they were going to, transplant, or however, whatever they decided to do. But hopefully we're going to see and get some information from the book itself. And I'm not going to go any further in his about page. So for those of you who are interested, it's michaeltsarion.com. It's his about page. You go and read a little bit more information about his past, or about who he is, and some of his credentials and accolades that he has known to have accomplished this lifetime. So let's go ahead and get into the book itself. And now I have a few other tabs that, in my opinion, they are, important to know as we read the book, because many people who, listen to my my channel, or frequent any of my other pages for the Noble House of Belmont, themselves, they're going to have questions that I might be able to answer as we start reading the book. And let's see if I will be able to answer them with these tabs that I have open. So we're going to go through those. It may not all be one time, but we're going to go through them. All right, so the poem written by Donatus, the Bishop of Faisal, 802 AD, and it says, "Far westward lies an isle of ancient fame, by nature blessed, and Scotia is her name. An island rich, exhaustless is her store, of viney silver and golden ore. Her verdant fields with milk and honey flow, her woolly fleeces vie with virgin snow. Her waving furrows float with verdant corn, and arms and arts her envied sons adorn." And that poem is talking about Aryan, or Ireland, or Erie, or Hibernia, however you want to, call her. All right. And Scotia, who's the princess, Egyptian princess. Also, they say she's the one who is named after, or Scotland's named after Scotia, and Ireland, and all that. It's all tied together, as you can see. Even though Ireland, as we seen read, comes from Queen Casser, who's the daughter of Noah's son Bith. So we're stemming from that information that we read, and that was coming from the Phoenicians, origins of Anglo-Saxon, Britons and Scots, or Brighton Scots and Anglo-Saxons, one or the other. All right, so of course, table of contents always, we're going to read the introduction. Now, we're not going to read everything in here, of course not going to happen. But there's a few chapters that of interest I would like to read. That is chapter 1, which is man's irrefutable errors. Chapter 5, the Aryans. Chapter 8, the Sun King of Ireland. Chapter 13, American Area. Now, these chapters, some of them have some length, others are a little bit shorter, and I don't want to keep everyone up all night, because it is, in my location, it is 8 o'clock at night, and I know Eastern Standard Time is 11. So, and I know we have people who like to stay up at night on the East, which I think hearing and reading this book alone is a very good nighttime read. So let's go ahead, because your mind is going to be thinking. and that's where, you're going to go on the quest when you travel and go into the dream world. So this is something you definitely want to read. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, introduction. During the next 10 years, the human race is destined to finally discover the facts about its true origins and destiny. As part of this discovery, we have to address the overwhelmingly important question of how the phenomena of evil came into the world and into the consciousness of Earth's human inhabitants. Pause. So, this is something that many of us, and it has always been on my mind, since, like I said, since I was little. Not only our origins, but where did this evil that they talked about in the old books, and did we see this taking place today in our present day world? When did this happen? There has to be a beginning. All right, so this is something that many people should be asking themselves. We should be questioning at least the origins of humanity, of where we come from, and that should be always one of the priorities on your mind. All right, let's continue. This is a question that should be on the mind of every living man and woman. Exactly. It has been with us for millennia and will be with the children of the future if we do not come up upon the answer now. Exactly. These are questions that we should be trying to answer ourselves. We should be trying to figure out, because it's no one else's obligation, especially something of this magnitude, should we put on our children to try to figure it out. It's almost like each generation that is born, it is your obligation to try to find out and get these answers before the next generation have to inherit those problems. And now they're forced to have to try to go through the same, rigmarole you went through to try to, either exist or, do the best that you can with what you do have. All right. So once again, these are questions that every adult or every human being today should have. And it is our obligation to not leave this heavy task on our children. Let's continue. We have left the question of evil in the hands of theologians and scientists for too long. This was surely a mistake, for, as the casualty statistics clearly testify, the institutions of religion and science have been the worst purveyors of evil that this planet has ever had to endure. Exactly. Pause. So, the fact we're relying on religion, and nothing is really wrong with religion and science, but they also are known to be, like they said, some of the worst provocators of evil that this planet have had to endure. And we can say in the name of science or in the name of religion, let's just say that, because even though that this what they were professing or proclaiming, that does not mean this is what they truly were doing. But the consequences of what they were claiming of doing was bringing us to the conundrum, or summing up something that we recognize and give a label to, which we call evil. All right, let's continue. After centuries of prevarication and criminality, we can no longer afford to look to these edifices to answer the all-important conundrum of evil. Michael Tsarion, Atlantis, alien visitation, genetic manipulation. Pause. So once again, these problems, it is not up to these organizations, these institutions, establishments, or even the children. It is not up for them to try to figure it out. It is up for us, as all of the human race on every continent, all over the world. It is our obligation, because evil has no color. It doesn't care on your race. It doesn't care on your nationality. It doesn't care on your sex. It doesn't care about your age. It doesn't care about none of that. It doesn't care if it walks. It doesn't care if you can talk. None of that. It just has an action that equates to death. pain, pestilence, being destitute, whatever. It's just not something that we can agree. It's not something that we all can agree that we want to be happening. Period. Let's continue. The object of my book, Atlantis, Alien Visitation and Genetic Manipulation, was to offer forth a theory concerning the origins of evil. I had long desired to discover how humankind's penchant for sadism, cruelty, and injustice came about. Exactly. Most people should have an interest. I want to know where did this stuff come from? And today we should be asking, why are we allowing it to happen? So if you're not thinking on that level, you may still have some growing to do. The book tells the story of the intervention of alien beings from distant galaxies who, upon their arrival to our planet, engaged in several genetic hybridization experiments. As a result of these transgenic experiments, Homo sapiens inherited a divided biology and psyche. This transgression of biological sovereignty by the alien visitors caused man to be perpetually at war with himself. Man's schizophrenic nature has given rise to schizogenic societies infested with injustice, crime, delinquency, and perversity. This is psychology 101, and it remains a self-evident fact regardless of whether the deep symbiotic connections between mind and world are acknowledged and accepted or whether they are not. Pause. So, like he said, or what he's explaining, what we can all agree with, the alien aspect, that's something that we're still, have to dive and investigate. But the consequence of, based off of what he's saying in regards to humans having a schizophrenic or who's created a schizogenic society, aka mentally deranged, perverse, neurotic, backwards humans, which we can see, or which we all can say, this is not our natural state. And clearly, if this is not our natural state, what happened to cause this to be part of our biology? What happened, or what infiltrated the human genome to cause it to be and to do what it's doing? Now, it's crazy that we're talking about this in the introduction, talking about the Irish origins of civilization, but we have to still give credence to what he's talking about, because no matter what civilization that we're reading, this is still a topic of interest that should be brought to the forefront, especially as us as the pioneers, or the leaders, the movers and shakers of the future. It's our duty to know and to understand what clearly seemed to have been shrouded or been hidden on purpose for whatever reason, but it's now, because of what has been hidden, it's allowing us to be in a state of decay. And now we have to figure out why, so therefore we can stop it before it's too late. All right, let's continue. So sadly, it may take another age before people of today's spiritually impoverished world understand the subtle rapport between microcosm and macrocosm. Pause. So yes, because the people today are mentally deranged and out of it because of their lack of understanding of how our reality is truly created, they are, which we can say, are in a state of spiritual, which is the best way to say, they're spiritually dead. These people today are spiritually dead to the point that they don't understand that how little small intricate things, situations, or a small microcosm world can have an effect on the large world at whole, and what we call the macrocosm, our walking, waking reality. So something so small can cause the larger world to be affected. And until you come into yourself spiritually, it's going to be hard for you to actually put those pieces together and to correlate how the microcosm affects the macrocosm. And until you understand that world or the micro world, you're going to have a hard time being able to truly maneuver in the macro world. All right. So nevertheless, let it be understood clearly and distinctly that freedom and truth will not visit the world while the hearts and minds of men remain toxic, immoral, and enslaved. As I assert in my other works, there can be no hope of positive change in our world until the true origins of evil are repraised and understood, and until men take responsibility for their mutilated psychic condition. Pause. Well said, well written. This is what our problem today, that until we truly take a stand and hold ourselves accountable. Why? Because we're the ones that's being affected. We're the ones that's living out this chaos or playing out this chaos, because we are in a demented role, whether it's by choice or not. We are still the players, and until we actually truly get a grasp on where this evil nonsense that has crept up within our world, the waking world of humanity, the waking world of the mammalian world, the 3D, 4D, whatever you want to call it now, dimension, where we exist on a biological sense, until we can understand when that came here and understand why it came and why it chose us, we can never really truly fix and put ourselves in a place of harmony and balance where good can actually flourish. All right. So until we, like he said, fix and take responsibility of our mutilated psychic mind, or excuse me, a mutilated psychic condition. So our mind, right now, we're mentally deranged. We're out of our mind. We're like insane. Insanity means doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So until we get off of this hamster wheel, get off this merry-go-round, come out of this bread and circus show, we're going to continue to keep falling. We have to come out of that. We have to take responsibility of this. And it's been going on for far too long. So once again, for those who are, which they will call the mature people, the mature audience, they will see that this is something that we need to deal with. And it does not require you to, have a certain background or whatever. If you're a human being, you got two legs, you have all of the senses that human beings are supposed to be born with or whatnot, then this is your job. This is you. You have been called. All right. So the problems that beset us today, both existentially and socially, have a date of birth. Exactly. So the problems that we're been facing with have a date of birth. It has a birth date. So if it has a birth date, then that means it has to have a death date, because whatever is born here on this planet has an expiration date. All right. So as I show in my work on Atlantis, we were not always beset by such chronic psychic and social problems. Historically speaking, they are recent phenomena. Exactly, pause. So even, let's go back from what's going on with us today, and let's go all the way back to, let's just say, for those who are alive, to the 20s, 30s. Yeah, we know that we're still coming right off of, just doing the, the Jim Crow era and all that. But think about the things that people were interested in on the scientific level, even still how, communities were working with themselves, let's say when people were segregated. However, before all of those problems were happening, this didn't, how people are today, where every society seems to be going backwards, that was unheard of. These things were, those problems were, what's the word I'm thinking of? They were localized. They weren't all over. As we can see now, this is something that's rampant all over the four corners, even under the West. Like I said, a lot of the problems that we see today that's affecting us, is plaguing us, they were localized, but now it's all over. And from what we're reading so far from the introduction, it had an origin date, because prior to when we're going to say the antediluvian time, during when it was Atlantis or whatnot, like he said in his work, this was not something that was plaguing the human genome or the human being or the human race, or excuse me, the human species, the planet itself. All right. So it says, so the date to about 13,000 years ago, and they do not have to persist. In fact, it is my belief that we are now in the final phase of the old paradigm. The time is coming when both the protagonist and the antagonist in the human drama will be compelled to face the legacy of the past, and also the forces that enter their lives to restore balance. Absolutely. Pause. Well said, well said, well said, or well written. So we are those, the protagonist and the antagonist. That is us. And we are, like he said, we're living out the last phase, or the last chapter, or the wrap up of this drama, of this show. Like they said, it's time for a new, we're getting ready for a rebirth, a reset. But before all of these things can happen, because you don't want to be besieged with the same issues that are plaguing us today, we're going to have to, like he said, face the past. We're going to have to look and see what happened to all of our ancient predecessors, all the ancient civilizations. Who are you? Where did you come from? Blah, 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 etc. What were you fighting? Why were you fighting these things? All because it seems like the consequences of all of those actions led us up to where we are where we're at now. And it seems that it will continue to the next chapter if we don't figure it out. And clearly, whatever's going on, it seems like it only gets worse. And if that's the case, I don't want to be part of what comes, and you don't want your children to be part of what comes that gets worse. And that seems to be what comes ever, whatever. I don't want to get into that. All right, so once again, and then also too, what comes into our lives, so therefore we can restore balance. So remember, especially, so I had a conversation today with a friend of mine, and I was explaining to him, for those of you who are aware that I am into Vedic, which we call sidereal, or called Yoitish astrology. And where I'm at now, I have Pisces in the third house. Pisces third house, North Node, which is known as Rahu, the dragon head. So I'm speaking about him as in the Western aspect. Rahu is known as what you're supposed to be focusing on this lifetime. So Rahu has the opposite, which is known as Ketu. Ketu is the dragon tail. Rahu dragon head, Ketu dragon tail, or they call the opposite, or called the moon nodes. So the south node, or Ketu, is the node where you're trying to come from. That's what their past life. The north node is what you're supposed to be going towards, which is a little bit more uncomfortable because you've never done it before, which is your focus this lifetime. So that's your destiny. And what happens is, based off of the understanding of astrology, is if you don't accomplish what you were supposed to be accomplishing based off of your natal chart, you will come back to repeat it. Do I believe that? Absolutely. Yes, I do. There's too many signs that I've seen in my life that have proven that this is literally how our reality is orchestrated. But I don't want to get into that. But too far into that, I want to stay on what I'm talking about. So I have Pisces, the third house. Pisces, third house, which we know Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, and the third house rule or deals with communication and small travel, siblings, whatever. Now, I explained to him, since Pisces is the spiritual sign, he's the one deals with isolate, or the one deals with resolution or dissolving, dissolution, wrapping up period, say religion, because technically, or spirituality, the dream world, that's all Pisces, and intuition. So you're supposed to, especially when it comes down to Pisces, I was explaining to him and having him in third house that I'm supposed to kind of be open and receptive to my surroundings and how my days are going, and be open to what, instead of just being so on 1, 2, 3 punctual script, just be like, kind of go with the flow, whatever comes my way, be open to it, be receptive to it, and see that is a meaning, there's a message there. And I was explaining that earlier that day, I on my way going to give my charitable services, that a man had stopped me, a fellow man had stopped me and gave me a Bible. And I tell him, everywhere I go, no matter who it is, if they give me a Bible, I take it, because I grew up knowing and hearing, which we know that is called the living word. Well, this is the living reality, and within that book, there's something within your life that's going to play out via one of those scriptures to tell you, to teach you something. So I'm like, okay, well, what I'm going to do with this today, I'm not going to read it yet. I put it in my pocket. I'm like, because I got to go to work, I got to do my thing. I'm going to put it to the side, and then whatever happens through the day, a scripture, I'm going to open it up and it's going to pop out, or whatever I'm doing, even this live. Like, I would explain to him I had to do this live, and I wanted to get it done today because it's been weeks since I planned to get it done and I didn't do it. But anywho, so to explain about that, I didn't get the chapter, I didn't go through the scripture yet, but when I'm explaining the book itself, it brought me to go back to start reading about the Irish origins of civilization, to do this live. So when I get done reading it live, we're going to start seeing, based off of that, what I was received from the Bible to what we read out of here, how there's signs that the spiritual world tries to show you, to have you pay attention to things that's going on in your waking reality, and to put a focus on a read on. And one thing that I know, the Bible itself, it was green. I still have it. It's over on my bed somewhere. It's green. Well, green is one color that's recognized by the Irish or Ireland. And then also too, green, it deals with the heart chakra. So, and this territory of the planet is the heart chakra planet, a part of the planet. So these are the signs, and then we're talking about to restore balance, and that's what we're trying to do, help restore balance, and it has to be done through the heart. So us knowing and remembering where we come from, it's going to help us restore the balance that we are trying to receive from our heart, which is the love, because this evil is the opposite of the love that we need to bring the good. All right, so as we read into the book, I'm going to start pulling some pieces out to show you, like, this is how I'm seeing the spirit world works with us. So let's go ahead and continue the book. Greetings, brother Megaro from the house of Megaro. I'm glad you can join, Noble. It's good to see you too. All right, so this is definitely a good one you don't want to miss. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel. The goal is try to get the channel out through the algorithm, especially to be able to get more of the good people out there in the world, to hopefully take an emphasis to try to understand what it is that we all have reincarnated this day and time to learn, and that is to know our origins and to be able to be the guardians for this planet. All right, so although I covered some of the key events pertaining to the alien visitation and subsequent infection of our perfumed planet by their presence, and although I did bring things up to the present Silicon Age, I stressed that it was not possible to cover the various exploits and machinations of the visitors throughout history. Space did not permit me to delineate the fascinating story of how the surviving Atlanteans and Lemurians, both descendants of the so-called fallen angels, toiled to establish new civilizations after incomprehensibly horrific cataclysms decimated their habitats. It is time now to address the new world that arose in the aftermath of the age of catastrophe. Pause. Thank you, Noble. I really appreciate it. Someone has to do it, and I know as many who's brave, who wants to do the work as well. So we just meet together in the right time, in due time, and hopefully now it's that. All right, so as we can just read or pay attention to what we just read for Mr. Tsarion wrote, that we are technically the remnants of the age of catastrophe. So we know that this planet itself did go through a cataclysm. All of the civilizations throughout, antiquity that we know of all have a story regarding some cataclysmic event. In this case, we can say a flood did happen on this planet. So, and we are those remnants, or the leftovers. We are still their children, and also the problems that they had back then, we somehow still inherited because it's in our blood. So that's what he's speaking on regarding the biological aspect in regards to the psychotic issues that's going on with humans today, is that whatever is in us, or whatever that was happening before the great catastrophe, it somehow survived and is still here with us today. And many people don't put that as a focal point, or even think of that. That lets you know how long this evil has been here, and it clearly has been with us since we can remember. All right, so let's continue. In the present volume, several novel ideas that the reader should be aware of are presented. The first and most important argument concerns the west to east migration of the elements of civilization. This theory rests upon the understanding that there were, in the prehistoric times, highly developed civilizations situated in the Western Hemisphere. Now, for those of us who are in America, we know America is in the Western Hemisphere. So America's in the Western Hemisphere, Ireland, or Hibernia, Great Britain, whatever, England, all these are also two part of the Western Hemisphere. These civilizations were brought to an abrupt end approximately 13,000 years BC by terrestrial upheavals of an unimaginable scale. The gnosis that had been accumulated by the advanced inhabitants of these hoary civilizations originated on the land masses known today as Ireland, England, Scotland, and Wales. These countries are part of Atlantis. I repeat, England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. These countries are part of Atlantis, or more specifically, especially for those of you who are in America, of the great continent of Appalachia. Now, where are the Appalachian Mountains? In America. The Appalachian Mountains are in America. So we can agree that Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales is actually still part of America, which they know or used to call America anciently part or ancient Atlantis. All right, so That's the reason I will explain why they came over and try to so-called claim ownership of America. I mean, I know I'm kind of going off of the rant, but that's why they so-called are claiming ownership of America, is because they know that they're the descendants of the original people who were also over here prior to the cataclysm. The problem is that the folks over in America forgot that. They are the ones who suffered the most, but the ones who survived and remembered a lot of the ancient culture in the past, they left and went where? They went east. So like Mr. Tsarion is explaining, the people didn't come from the east to go west. No, the people came from west and went east. They went west and went east. All right, so let me continue. So these countries, like once again, they were part of the Great Appalachia, which the Appalachian Mountains, aka we can say America. So from these locations, the gnosis was eventually carried. Gnosis, we know it's knowledge, was eventually carried eastward across lost land bridges into Europe and Asia. Exactly. So as you can see, Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, America are technically one, and all of the ancient knowledge that came from out of the West, because they're all considered the West, went east into Europe and Asia. Went to Europe and Asia. All right, so secondly, we contend that the term Aryan has been most egregiously misused. We believe it referred not to race, but caste. It was a term that simply distinguished spiritual and moral status. Pause. Exactly. So Aryan meant those who were spiritual and of a high moral caste. Good people, really good people. Though you don't see these types, it's only a far and few folks who will even qualify to even hold that title. And they consider the title of Aryan noble. That's why it's only specific people who are considered quote unquote nobles. Not everybody is noble. Even if you came from a noble family, it was only specific people who actually would truly bore that title noble, aka of a high distinguished spiritual and moral status, because that takes a lot of discipline, a lot of work. Now you can do it. You can do it today. That's the reason why they left a lot of these ancient texts of those folks who understand and follow the way. But we'll talk about that later. All right, so in our work, therefore, we use the term to refer to men from any racial stock. So remember, any background, who had perfected themselves in schools of initiation and who are adepts of high order. Exactly. So that it didn't require you to so-call your complexion or what nationality and all this and that. It was you. It was the individual. It was your character. It was your moral status, your spirituality. You've been initiated to the higher wisdoms. And only way for you to truly be able to be initiated into these higher wisdoms, to these higher knowledges, you had to be clean. You had to be pure. You had to have a pure heart. You had to be what they consider or call righteous. And then certain faculties within will open up for you to get the information or knowledge from the Most Highs that many men and women may be seeking, but only a chosen few will ever be endowed to receive. All right, so it says, we use the term to identify the Irish Druids and their Mesolithic ancestors, the European Sami, the Phoenician and Median Magi, the Egyptian disciples of Horus, the Mer, the Iberu, and any other groups of bards, poets, seers, prophets, hierophants, Archimandrites, and architects of distinction. The term Aryan was erroneously accepted as a racial distinction after its discovery by the 18th century scholar and Chief Justice Sir William Jones of Calcutta. Jones discovered that the Hindus referred to their ancestors who appeared in northern India and Pakistan during the 17th century BC as the Arya or Arya. He did not realize that the term signified spiritual qualities rather than racial, ethnic, or linguistic ones. Pause. So the term Aryan, Arya, it has nothing to do with so-called race. It's spiritual qualities. It's like I said, a moral compass. Those who are in tuned or initiated to the higher knowledge or the higher order. All right, and it doesn't have anything to do with your stock, your background. All right. So it says, as linguists adopt the term to signify a class of languages, so we adopt it in the purest context to represent those elders. So remember, you had to be elders. So those elders of any racial background possessed of exalted minds and hearts. That's not everyone today. So Paul, so as we can see here in America today, I think it just had to be spoken, and not so many people want to talk about it. You don't see many of those who are qualified age-wise as elders actually fitting the description of what a true elder is, which is equivalent to leader. And when you think of a leader, you think of someone who's pious, someone, who put others before themselves, someone who's intelligent, someone who's, who you really truly feel is being led by divinity. Someone who wants to be the mature representative for the people themselves and carry that position and title with honor and great reverence in regards to how they take the seriousness of that position, because that's not something that you should take lightly. You don't see that today. You don't see elders like that any longer. If we have seen them at all in quite some time. So we have to go back to understanding the ancient ways of the ancients. So therefore we can know and truly get a comprehension of what an elder is. Because the fact that we have not seen what an elder truly is in our modern day and time, that means it's time for us to go back to the drawing board and utilize our investigative minds to see what it is that needs to start walking amongst men and women today, and that is the elders. All right, so it says, when speaking of we are convinced that our rendition and interpretation will serve to clarify many historical anomalies and mysteries. When speaking of the racial origins or nature of the Mesolithic and Megalithic Irish, we prefer to use the more descriptive and accurate terms Nordic, Gothic, Caucasian, and Indo-European. Thirdly, we reject the term Celtic and refuse to use it when describing the ancient inhabitants existing in Ireland before 600 BC. We tentatively accept that Britain was finally reached by people who have been called Goidelic and Brittonic Celts after 600 BC, groups that anthropologists and historians finally had to admit were merely fragments of the larger Indo-European race. All right, pause. So like he's explaining, these people were technically the same folks, but when you're hearing about them in history, you only hearing about them almost in a localized way, because they're being broke off like in tribes and all this and that. But when you branch off back to the root, the common stock, they're all the same people. They're still the same freaking people. All right, and like they're saying, only modern day anthropologists and historians, they're finally starting to accept and admit, like, yeah, these the same folks. Yeah, they're the same people. Just separated and from location and time in history, came up with new names and identities, but same folks. All right, so of these invasions, Tacitus, Caesar, and Pythius, the Greek, written. Nevertheless, we prefer to deal with the pre-Celtic inhabitants and their antique civilization that had, in remote ages, spread eastward into Europe and Asia. Pause. So, like we're explaining from the ancient history from the West, those people, after the age of catastrophe, they went east. So they left from, like, say, ancient America before the floods and stuff like that. For all the whatever was happening, they left and they started going east, and whatever they remembered, they maintained. And as time went on, they, of course, people dropping off in new lands, and it's like the telephone game. Each new location they go, pick up new stuff. Some remnants of who they are is changing, and keep going on and on. But the more pure form, or the pure sense of who the people were, will be at, let's say, the first drop-off place before they start continuing going all the way out. Those folks will actually have more of the knowledge and the wisdom, the ancient past, compared to further east they go. Hope that makes sense to you, brothers and sisters. So it says, nevertheless, we prefer to deal with the pre-Celtic inhabitants and their antique civilization that had, in remote ages, spread eastward into Europe and Asia. We leave the word Celtic intact when quoting, confident that the reader will understand that it is a blanket term often used indiscriminately by authors, referring to Ireland's exceptionally gifted inhabitants, indiscriminately gifted inhabitants who are, more correctly, the Mesolithic or even megalithic people, builders of the Cyclopean temples of Ireland and the world that still stand as silent testaments to their august presence. The Celtic tribes of the Iron Age, believed to have entered Ireland after 600 BC, built their own civilizations upon the foundations of earlier ones they found there, which they reckoned had been erected by the gods. And that right there is our weighing segment. This is just the introduction. I did want to show you some tabs to corroborate with the term Celtic. Like you said, Celtic itself is a blanket term. It's actually a modern term. It's new. It actually did come into our vernacular until, I think, like the 17th, 18th century, something like. So it's really modernly still new. But we also know that the people there prior to that was also known as Gauls, or the Gauls, which we'll read a little bit about us if I can get the chance to. So the two other G.W. Atkinson supposes must be the highly intellectual race that imported into Ireland are Ogrims, round towers, architecture, metalwork, and above all, the exquisite art which has come down to us in our wonderful illuminated Irish manuscripts. The polished Tuatha were certainly contrasted with the rude Celts. Author Clive declares that civilization came in with an earlier race than the Celts and retired with their conquests by the latter. That's James Bonwick, Irish Druids, and Old Irish religions. Absolutely, Brother McGarrell. Every generation after the one before them forgot where they come from and post the age of catastrophe. And I'm glad you brought that up. And it's like, because the elders are passing away, and then also too, I think something happened as well during that age of that great catastrophe that made a lot of people just forget. And also we can agree that those who didn't forget, the information are in archives that are outside of our reach at the moment. But hopefully as time continues to go on, we will start having access to that information. So therefore we'll be able to read and see with our own eyes about the ancient past that clearly still have some type of grasp on us today. And until we understand that ancient past, we are going to forever and ever continue to keep repeating and playing this human drama on replay. All right, so next it says, and these are quotes from different books as we can see from different authors. The next one says, the Tuatha De Danann were the ancient inhabitants of Ireland who were forced to give way to the Gaels, or the Gaels. I was just talking about the Gaels, and to become the gods of Celtic imagination. So the Tuatha De Danann, or the Twa, where her now became mythical gods after the Gauls pretty much usurped their territory, their home. And we know Tuatha De Danann, they worship the goddess Danu, or we can call it goddess Dana. Danu, Dana, and Anu. That was also some of her other names that she went by. All right, so Danann was given to the pre-Celtic inhabitants of Ireland, in that it must have been they who built the megaliths. Their uncertain origins combined with their curious stone constructions give them a cloak of mystery. If the Celts drove out the megalithic peoples of Ireland, there is no reason why the same thing should not have happened on the continent, where much of the region occupied by the Celts still bears traces of megalithic monuments. Jean Marco, The Celts. All right, pause. Now, before I even go into the rest of that, I think because they spoke enough about the Tuatha De Danann, speaking in regards to the megalithic monuments that's in Ireland, I think it's good for me to truly go into the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica. And now, Brother McGarrell, I'm sure he knows exactly what I'm going to do. But for those of you who have never, frequented this channel, who don't know what I'm about to do, you're in for a treat. Because the same people in regards to who built these megalithic monuments, their descendants are still here. And unfortunately, their descendants are suffering for which we can call aphasia and amnesia. And because of what happened to us, like Brother McGarrell said, the trauma of post-traumatic syndrome, it's hard for a lot of them to actually access these memories. So even for you to be able to access these memories, you have to be actually placed into a state which I like to call peace. You have to put the body, you have to put yourself back into the original position. The original position of our people before the great cataclysms was peace. You have to put the body in peace. Only way for you to put the body in peace, you have to go where? Isolation. Isolation was the equivalent to like putting yourself in a hospital for healing. You go in isolation like when you go on a retreat, to rejuvenate yourself. Unfortunately, because of our daily lives that we have been succumbed to, it's hard for a lot of our brothers and sisters to be able to put themselves into a position where they can actually truly relax and be in peace, where they body, or where they can actually truly travel mentally to unlock those hidden memories that is embedded within their DNA. So all of the memories that happened to all of our predecessors, going all the way back to the ancient antiquity, which we can saw catastrophic, or the age of catastrophe, it's all still embedded in our DNA. It's still there. That's the reason why some of us have premonitions or have these flashes and dreams and visions and things of like certain scenarios from like a world that's reminiscent of the world that we live in, but the mechanics of it is just different. Like you could tell, like, hold on, this is Earth, but it's not Earth the time that I'm existing now. And we know this is true because, science is constantly keep showing more proof in regards to that the reality that we're living in now is a heck of a lot different than what the age of how the reality of our world was prior to the age of catastrophe. All right, so let's go ahead and go to what I wanted to show next. This is just so those people can see what it is. This is the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, Volume 3, 11th edition. All right. So you can see where I'm referencing where I'm getting information from to tie into what what I was called to show you. And this ultimately is to wake up my sleeping brothers and sisters, like Brother Miguel are saying, who are suffering from the post-traumatic syndrome from in their memories from when they were born anciently all the way until now. All right, so and in terms, as you can see, that we're putting the focal point on. Is Berbers. Oh, it's not allowing me to accept it. Okay, here we go. All right, Berbers. So once again, we just spoke about the Irish, the megalithic monuments, and speaking about how the Celts, who aren't really Celts, usurped original people there who were considered the Tuatha De Danann. And it wasn't the Celts, it was the Gauls who did it. And with that information, we are now seeing who are truly those people who, or we want to know who are truly those people who are built those megalithic monuments, and what names or what titles they may be known as today. All right, so the reason why we went to Berbers is because that's who built them, or that's what they're called now today. And how can we tell? Well, we're going to read from the mouth of the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica. All right, so it says Berbers, the name under which are included the various branches of the indigenous Libyan race of North Africa. Since the dawn of history, the Berbers have occupied the tract between the Mediterranean and the Sahara from Egypt to the Atlantic. The origin of the name is doubtful. Now pause. Now when it says Sahara from Egypt to the Atlantic, they're talking about the Atlantic Ocean. Well, what's right there that deals with the Atlantic Ocean? You have America that deals with the Atlantic Ocean from the East Coast, and then surrounding the Iberian Peninsula as well, Ireland, it's the Atlantic Ocean. All right, let's continue. So we're not just saying because of that, but let's continue. The origin of the name is doubtful. Some believe it is to be derived from the word barbarians, employed first by the Greeks and later by the Romans. Others attribute the first use of the term to the Arab conquerors. However, this may be. Tribal titles, Barbara and Barabarata, appear in Egyptian inscriptions of 1700 and 1300 BC. Pause. Now, we read where it says, remember it says 1300 BC. Talk about 600 BC about the Britannic Celts, but when he said the evil. In the present volume, several novels that readers should be aware of are presented. The first and most important argument concerns the west to east migration of the elements of civilization. This theory rests upon the understanding that there were, in prehistoric times, highly developed civilizations situated in the Western Hemisphere. Now, Libya is the Western Hemisphere, or location where the Berbers are on in that territory. That's all considered the part of the West. All right, these civilizations were brought to an abrupt end approximately 13,000 years BC by terrestrial upheavals of an unimaginable scale. All right, now let's go back to, however this may be, tribal titles Barbara and Barabarata appear in Egyptian inscriptions of 1700 and 1300 BC. And the Berbers were probably intimately related with the Egyptians in very early times. So Berbers, Egyptians, all been, as we can see, technically one and the same, but being around the time of the Great Upheaval is explained around 1300 or 13,000 BC. So this is what this is, or this is, excuse me, make sure I said that right because I don't want to be off. 13,000 BC or 13,000 years BC. So I know it's technically saying the same thing, minus he must got that off because 13,000 years BC is not the same as 1300 BC. But that just kind of played with it for the sake of the argument. And the Berbers were probably intimately once again related in Egyptians in the very early times. Thus, the true ethnical name may have become confused with Barbary, the designation naturally used by classical conquerors. To the Egyptians, they were known as Libu, Mashwasha, Tamahu, Tehenu, and Kahaka. A long list of names is found in Herodotus, and the Romans called them Numidii, Gaiduli, and Mari, terms which have been derived respectively from the Greek nomads, the name Guadula of a great Berber tribe, and the Hebrew Maor, Western. All right, pause. So yeah, so Berbers were known as Westerners, as we can see. Also, they were known as Barbary, and they also called them Mari. They were also called Numidii by the Romans. So these are all Berbers. They were also known as Lebu, Mashwasha, Tamahu, and Tehenu. So the Berbers have been known as many different names based off of the tribes and their sub-tribes. But we're going to continue to see because we want to know how Berbers, or are the Berbers the ones who are connected to Ireland. So we're going to see. Let's continue. And this is once again the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica. Second, we know how the internet like to mess up when you're trying to do some work. Okay. All right, here we go. Okay, so there can be let's see if it let me pull it over. One second. Still just trying to pull this over. I'm gonna be able to view it the way I'm trying to view it. Zoom out. Okay, yeah. I don't think it's gonna allow me to view it, the book the way I'm trying to view it, so I can show you. Anyway, let me finish reading. So it says, so there can be enumerated the Zawawa, the Jabalia, Tripoli in Tunisia, the Chawiya, the Caballos in Beni Mazab, Algeria, the Shlu, Amazigh in Berbers, Morocco, the Tuareg, the Mashag, the Sorgu, and the Sahara. These tribes have many sub-tribes, each with a distinctive name. Among the Asgar, an important division of the Tuareg, one of the noble or free tribes, styled Aragan, is said to descend from a tribe called Africa. The Africa or the Africa in ancient times occupied the coastlands near Carthage, and some scholars derive the word Africa from their name. All right, pause. Hold on, I need to make that bigger so that way you can see this. Let me see. All right. No, it says, so as in regard to the ethnic relations of the Berbers, there has been much dispute. The antiquity of their type is evidenced by the monuments of Egypt, where their ancestors are pictured with the same comparatively blonde features, which many of them still display today. All right, so let me go ahead and show you. It says, ancient Libyan procession on Egyptian hieroglyphs. You see them with their blonde hair. Exactly, Brother Miguel, the Wessex culture, or the West culture, or the Western culture. Exactly, the culture of the West, or the Westerners. And who is the Westerners? The Berbers. So the culture of the Berbers. All right, and then once again, this is the Egyptian hieroglyph or imagery showing them, the Berbers, with their blonde hair, like explained in the 1911 encyclopedia. It says, evidenced by the monuments of Egypt, where their ancestors are pictured with the same comparatively blonde features, which many of them still display today. The Aborigines of the Canary Islands, the Guanches, would seem almost certainly from the remains of their language to have been Berbers. But the problem of the actual origin of the Berber race has not yet been solved. Exactly. So, of course, they would try to say North African indigenous, but as they're explaining, they don't know. Why? Because we ain't come from so-called North Africa. You know, I'll explain in a whole nother video, but we're going to continue. Perhaps the most satisfactory theory is that of Sergi, who includes the Berbers in the Mediterranean race. General LLC Ferdabi regards them as an indigenous Libyans mingled with a fair hair or a fair skin, people of European origin. Now, fair skins means like a clear, healthier or whatever type skin, handsome, without blemish. Doesn't always mean so-called white, whatever so-called most people may think. Fair just meant pure, clear, without blemish, all that stuff, healthy. Dr. Franz Pruner Bay, Henry de Virier, and Professor Flinders of Patrick maintain that they are closely related to the ancient Egyptians. All right, so they're saying that the Egyptians and the Berbers are related. Connection has been traced between the early Libyan race and the Cro-Magnon and other early European races, and later the Basque peoples, Iberians, Picts, Celts, and Gauls. The megalithic monuments of Iberia and Celtic Europe have their counterparts in Northern Africa. Whatever the suggested that they were all erected by the same race. You hear this? The same race. So I'm going to say it again. Connection has been traced between the early Libyan race, that's Berbers, and the Cro-Magnon, and other early European races, and later the Basque peoples, Iberians, Picts, Celts, and Gauls, or Gauls, however they want to pronounce them. The megalithic monuments of Iberia, that's Spain. Iberia, they talk about Spain, or the Iberian Peninsula, and Celtic Europe, that's Ireland. Or Celtic, excuse me, not just Ireland, that's all of Europe. Celtic Europe, because the Celtic culture expanded from the east all the way to the west of Europe, from so-called the west of Ireland all the way, even down to Iberian Peninsula. We have the called Celtic Iberians, all the way over to the mid part of what we can call Central Europe. All right, so in Celtic Europe, and have their counterparts in Northern Africa, and it suggested that these were all erected by the same race, by whatever name they be known. Berbers and Libyans in Africa, Iberians in Spain, Celts, Gauls, and Picts in France and Britain. So whatever you named them, you called them, if you call them out of any of these names, it all reverts to the same people, the same common stock, which is what? Berbers. In spite of history of foreign conquest. So pause. So they're saying that the megalithic monuments that we see in those territories, excuse me, I want to jump in the gun, in these territories, if the Celts drove out the megalithic peoples of Ireland, that also means that the Celts and those people who also was the megalithic people of Ireland, these must all been the same people. They had to have been. Where you at? The megalithic monuments of Iberia and Celtic Europe have their counterparts in North Africa. So we talk the megalithic monuments. So these same people have built this, just separated through time and let's just say ideology, because that's what most of these people are fighting, because of ideology. All right. So in spite of history of foreign conquest, Phoenician. Remember we spoke and we read the Phoenician book, Phoenician origin of ancient, of the Anglo-Saxon, Scots, and Britons. So the Phoenician, Greek, Roman, Vandal, Arab, and French. The Berber physical type and the Berber temperament and nationality have persisted since the Stone Age. That's the megalithic period, or the Neolithic era, brothers and sisters. Berbers existed since the Neolithic era, which means they existed before any of these other so-called identities popped up. There were no Phoenicians, there were no Greek, no Roman, no Vandal, no Arab, no French. There were no Iberians, Picts, Celts, Gauls, Irish. None of those people existed during under name-wise underneath the Neolithic era, but the Berbers did. They wouldn't go all the way to the Stone Age. All right. And nationality. When you talk about nationality, that's identity. What you identify as a group of people, you know, with same characteristics, same creed, all the same stuff that you see today that personifies what a nation should be. All right. So it says, so the numerous invasions have naturally introduced a certain amount of foreign blood among the tribes fringing the Mediterranean. So like I said, so there's been a lot of invaders, a lot of foreign blood brought in to break up the purity of the Berbers, of the Berbers bloodline. But those farther inland have preserved their racial purity to a surprising degree. Though considerable individual differences of type may be found in every village. So we have a common look, but as they said, but there's varieties of us. So you can't always say that because some such and such it ain't a Berber. No, there's different looking Berbers. There's Berbers all over the freaking world. But there's so many different tribes and different varieties of us. All right, like how we explain it to us here on my channel, or also the Third Temple English Church of England members. We are Anglo-Saxon Berbers, and that's because we understand that we're not only just the descendants of the Anglo-Saxons came in, but we also too identify as the original people who were there in the territory prior to our predecessors or our paternal side coming into the territory we call Britain or Albion at that time, anciently. So we are still all of those people, no matter what. We're mixed up. So all of these names, even that I just explained from the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, we're not throwing none of that away. We're not throwing none of those identities away. We just come to understand that we're all of that. We have just been mixed up and summed up together to a point of having to accept who and what we are today underneath our English identity. We're not throwing away any of this. We're not throwing away none of that. We're just bringing it all together so we can make sense to simplify it. You know, and the reason why I'm talking about the Irish information is going to make sense here very, very soon, because there's one caveat that a lot of people are forgetting when it comes down to truly understanding the origins of your ecclesiastical understanding of the church. For you to truly understand that, you have to go to the origin of where it came from, and for you to truly understand the origin of where it come from, you have to truly understand the origin of where it come from. You have to know the writers. Why did they do it? Those people, why did they usurp the origin of Christianity and place it in a different area of the world and got different people thinking that that's who they are when it actually didn't come from there? It came from Britain, or we're going to say Ireland, Great Britain. And only you'll make the Bible truly only make sense if you place it in that territory. But we'll talk about that later. All right, so it says, though considerable individual differences of the type may be found in every village, the Berbers are distinctively a white race. Pause. So now when we say white, we're not talking about so-called skin complexion. No, when they speak about white race, they talk about in this case, they're talking about in regards to purity of blood, of not have been pretty much endued with so many outside interferences. All right. So that's what that means. Now we go from white and black from an ecclesiastical standpoint, because that's technically where a lot of this jargon start coming in from. It was from that. That's talking about character, regards to those who are considered pure in character, clean in character. Like I said, like we speak in regards to the term Aryan, moral, spiritual caste system. That's what white meant. It had nothing to do with so-called skin complexion. That's when you start getting into that lower vibration talk, when you start idolizing your skin complexion. You know, that's not something no one historically in ancient times ever did. You know, people idolize their mindsets, you know, their intelligence, their wisdom. That's what people used to talk about and rant and rave about, you know, their spiritual qualities and things of that nature. No one really sat there and talked about, you know, and it was so, you know, gung-ho on in regards to their skin complexion and other, you know, fantasizing how, you know, our people unfortunately do today. But and yes, like you had said, brother Miguel, the Berber diaspora. So yes, the Berber diaspora, we have been spread all over the four corners of the world. And if many brothers and sisters, if you haven't understood the Berber diaspora, you're going to really start understanding it from those of us, not only from the not from only this channel, but from the Third Temple English Church, headed by King Clifford Jefferson from the Royal House of Plantagenet. So once again, the King has been on this going all the way back since 2018, 2019, which was a perfect alignment for the 2020 Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that historically we know is a prophetic conjunction. And what came back on that time was the English church. And for those of you who don't understand, once, like I said, I'm going to explain about the origin of the English church. For you to understand that, you have to understand the history of the Irish. All right, so let's continue. So like I said, Berbers are distinctly a white race, and the majority would, if clad in European costume, pass unchallenged as Europeans. All right, so you know what European clad costumes are. You can look that up, brothers and sisters. And once again, they're not talking about skin complexion. It has nothing to do with skin complexion, even though we do come in various shades. All right, shades all the way as dark as night to as white as what we call albino. Berbers, we come in so many different shades, it's ridiculous. People too, you will constitute or call quote unquote white people, but that's not what or who and what it is when we talk about the term white, as of who Berbers are as a white race. All right, so dark hair, brown or hazel eyes are the rule. Blue-eyed blondes are found, but their frequency has been considerably overstated. So they're telling you, like, say, yeah, they exist, but it's not like how you think or you may think it is. Like, nah, it ain't a lot of them like that. Exactly, like I said, they overstated. All right, so it says the invaders who have most affected the Berber race are the Arabs, but the two, and so we don't have to go into all of that. All right, so the most important part that we spoke of is who the Berbers are, to tie into the Irish, to show you that the original people there, they're technically Berbers. The ones who came in, they technically were Berbers as well. Or the ones who created those megalithic monuments. All right, so it says next, the first authorities to dispense with the term Celtic and to point out its spuriousness was the great alternative historian and linguist, Professor Lawrence Austin Waddell. So that's L.A. Waddell, once again, the author of the Phoenicians, Origins of Brighton Scots, Anglo-Saxons. So strangely, although they probably were and are familiar with Professor Waddell's writings and theories, most historians, alternative and orthodox, have continued to employ the term Celtic even when it's liable to engender and perpetuate misunderstandings. In our work, we adhere to Professor Waddell's sound counsel regarding this unfortunate but widely used term. There is no evidence in the British Isles to suggest that a population group of any size migrated from the continent in the first millennium BC. And that's Sir Barrington Winter Cunliffe, Iron Age Britain. No traditional historical reference or record whatever exists of the migration of any people called Celts into early Britain. Professor L.A. Waddell, Phoenician Origins of Brighton Scots, Anglo-Saxons, to speak as to so commonly done of Celtic ancestry, the Celtic temperament and Celtic fire amongst any section of the natives of these islands is, according to anthropologists, merely imaginary. All right, so Paul, so they're pretty much explaining and saying that once again, Celts, or the term Celts, those folk, it doesn't exist. It's not real. People may have been that, but those folks who they claim to, not real, created. All right, so it says the term Celt did not exist in the ancient languages of the Irish, Scots, or Welsh. There's only the Pictish Celtes, most likely signifying invaders from France, Belgium, Germany, Galatia, and the Ukraine. The term Keltoi was first employed by the incompetent Greek historian Herodotus to describe Western Europeans, such as the Irish, Scots, and Gauls, etc. After his time, other historians such as Caesar and Strabo continued to use this vague term to broadly denote any foreign tribe that Rome considered barbaric and antagonistic. Suggestively, however, Caesar's Tacitus, Hecataeus, Strabo, and Herodotus never employed the term to describe the people of Britain. And this, at least we find accurate. Possibly they knew that these Celtic groups were, as their languages indicate, merely a branch of the Indo-European race that had inherited their language, customs, traditions, and religion from highly sophisticated ancestors whom most historians and anthropologists have been conspicuously reluctant to name or describe, and whose influence has spread to India, Egypt, China, and the Americas. It is only in relatively recent times that this ambiguous term Celtic has been transposed to define the early Irish. By the 19th century, its usage in this regard was common. Nevertheless, to use the term Celtic to signify the racial quality of the ancient Irish is an utterly futile endeavor, since the physiology, stature, and pigmentation of these peoples is markedly dissimilar from those Pictish, Gaelic, Slavic, Germanic, Alpine, Iberian, Mediterranean, continental, Celtic types that, although related to Indo-European races, had probably perpetually crossbred with non-Caucasians throughout Europe and Asia. Pause. So once again, he's explaining, even still, though off branch of them may have bred with non-Caucasians, the stock themselves of the Celtic, as well as those who they're coming to usurp, all still come from a common ancestor. They still come from the same group, no matter how long or how distant they may be in history. They still are the same folks. In the composition of Celtic and the old Indo-European predominance enormously, this is an established fact of great importance, and M.R. Dobie, The Rise of the Celts. So we see that the ambiguous term Celtic was introduced at a late date by Greeks and Romans. Then in the 17th century, it was reintroduced by the Welsh antiquarian Edward Lloyd, 1660 to 1709, and by others of his sentimental disposition. We would prefer the term be dropped universally when referring to the racial origins of the ancient Britons and Irish. The Irish were not Celtic. They were Celticized by invading foreign powers, particularly those from Rome. All right? Did the islanders really call themselves Celt? It is extremely doubtful whether the inhabitants of Ireland ever gave themselves a name of the kind. M.R. Dobie, The Rise of the Celts. However, there is one thing that the Romans, modern archaeologists, and the Iron Age islanders themselves would all agree on. They were not Celts. This was an invention of the 18th century. The name was not used earlier. The idea came from the discovery around 1700 that the non-English island tongues relate to that of the ancient continental Gauls, who really were called Celts. This ancient continental ethnic label was applied to the wider family of languages, but Celtic was soon extended to describe insular monuments, art, culture, and peoples, ancient and modern. Island Celtic identity was born, like Britishness in the 18th century, by Dr. Simon James, The Peoples of Britain. After this introduction by Edward Lloyd in 1707, the use of the word Celtic as an umbrella term for the pre-Roman peoples of Britain gained considerable popularity in the 19th century and remains in the common usage. However, its historical basis is now seen as dubious by many historians and archaeologists, and this usage has been called into question. Simon James, formerly of the British Museum, makes the point that the Romans never used the term Celtic in reference to the peoples of Britain and Ireland, and points out that the modern term Celt was coined as a useful umbrella term in the early 18th century to distinguish the non-English inhabitants of the archipelago when England united with Scotland in 1707 to create the Kingdom of Great Britain, and the later Union of Great Britain and Ireland as the United Kingdom in 1800. Nationalists in Scotland, Ireland, and Wales looked for a way to differentiate themselves from England and to assert their right to independence. James then argues that, despite the obvious linguistic connections, archaeology does not suggest a united Celtic culture, and that the term is misleading, no more or less meaningful than the Western. As from Wikipedia Online Encyclopedia, the so-called Celtic question, than which no greater stumbling block in the way of clear thinking exists, there is practically today a complete unanimity of opinion among physical anthropologists that the term Celt, if used at all, belongs to the brachiocephalic round-headed darkish population of the Alpine, Swiss highlands, totally lacking in the British Isles, and that's by W.Z. Ripley, The Races of Europe. Celt is now a term that skeptics consider so corrupted in the archaeological and popular literature that it is worthless. Stephen Oppenheimer, The Origins of the British, a genetic story. All right. So those are all of the authors from their research that corroborate that he put in to show that the term Celt or Celtic is actually an anomaly. It's not who the people identified as, and it was actually created in the so-called, technically the 17th, 18th century to identify the foreign invaders, and 9 times out of 10 they consider those foreign invaders so-called Roman invaders. The term Gaelic, referring to later Celtic arrivals than Goidels, is retained when quoting in as traditionally acceptable term for the language spoken. In Ireland, from a remote period influenced by later visitors and radically modified after the colonization of Romans, Anglo-Saxons, and Normans, we hesitate to use the term to designate the primordial inhabitants of Ireland. The Gaels or Goidels were another branch of the Celtic groups from Europe who allegedly crossed to Ireland around the 4th, 5th, or 6th centuries BC, depending on which officially posted theory one believes. These Goidels were known by the Irish mythographers as the Milesians, or the children of Mil. They were descendants of the Scythian Celts who had visited Egypt and returned to their western homelands after the reign of Pharaoh Akhenaten. Among their number was Skoda, the daughter of the Atenist or the Atanist pharaoh, and his consort Nefertiti. In his fine book, Dawn of Civilization, Egyptologist Sir G. Maspero expressed a great historical question that we seek in our present text to address and solve. He asked, what were the people by whom Egyptian civilization was developed? The country whence they came, the race to which they belong, is today unknown. The solution to this age-old problem involves a critical look at the information that has been supplied to us concerning the origin, migration, and dispersion of the elements of civilization. It involves a reprisal of post-Diluvian history and the roles played not only by the empires of Asia Minor and Egypt, but also by those of Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England. This work will show the reader how important the ancient lands, known poetically as Logres and Albion, were to the future of the world. Pause. So they're explaining, so like you said, Logres, which is Ireland or Hibernia, and Albion, which is Scotland and England, which we call Great Britain today, and Wales, which we call Great Britain today, are the future to the world. So knowing that history, knowing their mythos stories, things of that nature, is what's going to corroborate with what's going to change the future of our reality as we know it. In this text, we will show that the civilizing role of these lands had been deliberately obscured due to a pernicious, age-long campaign of knowledge suppression and mass murder. Exactly. So this is what happened. A lot of the ancient knowledge from the past from these territories have been pretty much have been washed away, and I'm just going to say just been scrubbed away in this case. So therefore, you would think that everyone who was brought up on these lands were technically primitive so-called people who was, butt naked, running out there with spears and pitchforks or whatever, when they actually were very highly civilized, intelligent people, coming from what they call the higher civilization. All right. So the auction of a whole civilization, the finest known, and the extermination of the Druids are too many subjects that are brought into the limelight in these volumes. It is for this reason that this author first chose in his previous book to deal with Atlantis and Lemuria, since it was from there that the story of the ancestors of the Gaels and the Celts began. If we are to seek out the origins of the Arthurian legends and of the Welsh, Irish, and Scottish myths, it is to lost Atlantis and Lemuria that we are to look. And if we are to seek out reasons as to why the true story of these places and peoples has not hitherto been revealed, we need to begin with the contingents who dominate and rule mankind from behind the obvious thrones of religion and politics. Exactly. As I revealed in my first book, these ruthless agencies also happen to have their origins in the ancient past. They are either the biological or ideological descendants of the sorcerers of Atlantis. Pause. So Lemuria and Atlantis are, like you say, they're our predecessors. They are where we come from, which is the ancient past. And like you said, whatever is causing us our issues today had to have come from Atlantis. So it was either it's a biological, living sentient entity, or just the idea of itself that was created back during Atlantis time, has now have proliferated and has become a living thing that is now plaguing our reality as we know it. And like you said, it's coming back from the sorcerers of Atlantis. So in our text, we wish to accomplish three main things. We wish to explore as much as may be possible the evidence for the west to east migration of the elements of civilization. However, since it is illogical to suppose that any single volume can hope to furnish complete proof of this thesis, we offer our work as an introductory overview to stimulate interest with a reminder that it is merely a progress report on a great study that needs the proverbial jumpstart. This great thesis was first explored at the turn of the last century by Anna Wilkes and Connor McDerry, and then later by the great Coleman Beaumont. For those of you who don't know Coleman Beaumont, he's the author of The Great Deception. Highly recommend you to read it. Since Beaumont's time, interest has lapsed, and we know its controversiality to be the reason for this. We specifically address the Irish origins of civilization and begin at least to nullify many of the counter-arguments that deem the elements of civilization to be of Greek, Roman, and Jewish origin. Furthermore, we eagerly examine the ancient roots of modern tyranny. The Irish origins of civilization has been obscured, and we find ourselves duly interested in the nature and agenda of the obscurers. This contentious work had to be for a reason, and we suppose they have not confined their work of obscuration to this one area alone. Moreover, as we will show, the millennia-old knowledge possessed and used to good effect by the ancient Druids and their ancestors was appropriated by those with no legitimate claim to it. Exactly. So we have usurpers who pretty much stole our inheritance and are utilizing it against us. And unfortunately, you don't know that it's yours because you don't know who you are. All right. Or if you do know that is yours, you still don't know who you are because you're not claiming the right people who's actually it is. You're claiming to be something else. All right, so what it has been used as a weapon against humanity. The wielders of the weapon of occult knowledge will be revealed and their executive branch finally exposed before the world. We strongly believe and advocate that it is quite impossible for good men to ever triumph over the malign and originally alien establishment that controls humankind without a thorough working knowledge of the way in which it operates to achieve success. Exactly. So only way for those who claim to be good, for you to truly to have success in that domain, you have to understand where this evil, where it's coming from, its origin, and how it thinks, and what's pretty much what its playbook and or game plan is, or long end game is. All right, because without having that, without knowing that, you can never truly be as effective as you think you are. All right. If we are to defeat the world's merciless and tyrannical hierarchs, we must, like detectives, be thoroughly conversant with their modus operandi, and like hounds on a trail, must be familiar with their scent, so to speak. Our adversary is both a mutilator and a scavenger. It is a virus within the ailing body politic. It is a cunning alien force that has infected humankind with its own anti-human nature. It is within us as much as it is out there in our world. We are either of its kind and under its power, or we are its sworn opponents. In light of this, my inquiry is not for everyone. It has been composed for the new generation of opposers, imbued with an ardent and invanquishable spirit of rebellion. It is a manifesto for those who will, in their time, witness the demise of evil and the ruin of its agents. It is not for those who cannot comprehend the severity of the infamy in their world, or who lack the spirit of contradiction. Pause. Exactly. So this book, even this walk, even this path of this intellectual movement, this is not for the weak-minded, and it's not for the weak-hearted or the faint at heart. You have to be pure at heart, and you have to be pure in mind for you to be able to do this great work. You have to be healthy, not only healthy in your talks, but you have to be healthy in your actions. You have to be healthy in your looks, because health is wealth. And as I know it's a saying we say today, but the saying or the terminology of even be considered the anointed one. Anointed mean healthy one. So for you to be the anointed one, the healthy one, you have to be healthy in mind, body, and spirit. That is the true meaning of being Christ, or the anointed one. It's the one who has been healed in mind, body, and spirit. And that mind, body, and spirit, body, or individual, or individuals, because it's actually the Christ rise within many. That's what it's saying, or the speaking of the so-called the Aryan spiritual, or the Aryan caste, which is a spiritual moral caste, which when you start understanding, when I'm going to explain, that's who Christ was. Christ was walking in the path of the Aryans, aka those descendants, or those who came from the descendants of Atlantis, those who knew the ancient knowledge, or what they call Gnosticism, or the ancient talks of what the Druids knew, which Christ himself technically was considered, quote unquote, a Druid, for those of you who actually know where Christianity got its origin and all that stuff come from. So we're going to explain that hopefully a little bit in this as well, because a lot of people get confused with this stuff. But when you start breaking it down, and once you start doing their investigative research, this is actually a simulated science scripted down to a T, that they knew that the Redeemers were going to be known based off of their chart. So we're going to get into this. This is going to be good build. It's going to be really good. All right, so continue. So it is not this author's intention to provide weaponry to those without inherent systemic strength, will, and passion. Exactly. So you have to have the will and the passion already within you. Just like they say, the law must be written on your heart. So you have to have a moral compass and code already ingrained and embedded in you, that you don't need no other man or woman to tell you how to live and operate out of. It's already within you. And this is what they are speaking about, those chosen ones, or those specific activated ones, who just already, they just know. And it has no color. It has nothing to do with your skin tone. It's just something about you at the time you were born, based off of the alignment of the stars, that you would consider you're the one. That's the one, via the alchemical makeup within you, because you have the ability to process that information, because of you have done the great work, and God have endowed you with what it is that you are come to do, because of your ability to now understand and comprehend the complex information, and to be able to simplify it in your everyday life, for you to, like I said, once again, step out and be the guardian of this planet as you were designed to be. All right, so my message is intended for those readers who do understand that the domestic, social, and economic worlds they live in and labor to perpetuate, like the political parties voted for, have been created by powerful and sophisticated unseen forces that have, age after age, placed men, women, and children upon the dark altars of sacrifices as offerings to their vile, perfidious gods, like Edgar Allan Poe's nightmarish pendulum, The blades of the tyrannical ritual murderers are now, as I write, descending toward the neck of humanity for the last time. Time is short, but though it may at first seem meager comfort, let us remember that if and when lightning strikes in the shadow-haunted landscape, we get to see everything with incredible lucidity. For that incendiary instant, nothing is hidden from the eye. May this work provide such a flash in the dark. May it illumine the workings of the ingenious machinery of evil that pulverizes truth, freedom, and virtue, and beneath which the once radiant, truth-intoxicated souls of men now lie prostrate. And that's coming from Mr. Michael Tsarion. And then the Druidic motto, Igwer Erdogan Ibid, which says truth against the world. And that's what we should be standing for, truth against the world, because only, like they say, the truth can truly set us free. And that was the introduction. So now let's get to chapter 1. So most likely the other chapters, depending on which other chapter I can get to through this one, we're going to probably be doing another live. I'll probably do again tomorrow. The goal for me to start being a little bit more consistent, break through the algorithm, so therefore others can hear and heed the message and start putting themselves in a position, cleaning their minds up, cleaning their body up, cleaning their spirit up. Because for you to be able to truly get the knowledge and the wisdom that you as the chosen ones are supposed to have, it requires you to truly discipline yourself as like they say, a disciple of Christ, walk in the likeness and image of Christ. And Christ was a Druid. For those of you who don't understand this, Christ, yes, or the understanding of Christ, was a Druid. And the Druids, they were known to be peaceful people, and they got all of their knowledge going all the way back to the so-called ancient Aryans who they descend from. But we're going to talk about that hopefully as we continue to move on inside this this lesson, or this read, excuse me, or breakdown. It's another way to call it, breakdown. So chapter 1, man's irrefutable errors. The Irish are one of the most ancient nations that I know of at this end of the world, and are from as mighty a race as the world ever brought. That's Edward Spencer, writer and British government official in Ireland, AD 1596. And before I continue, for those of you who also don't understand, the reason why the Irish is very important to understand is because the Irish did not get conquered and did not get invaded by Rome. They were completely set free or separated from Rome. And so their understanding when it comes down, exactly, Druids are high priests who are descendants coming from the high rate or the high civilization, high caste system. That's why they was known as white, because they were considered pure ones, the seers of nature and all this and that. But even there, like I said, their lineage goes all the way back. That's why we're talking about it today. So once again, and then to understand Christianity and the Bible and all that, you have to understand the what we can about the Druids. And what we do know about the Druids is going to be coming from the Romans, because they destroyed a lot of that history. And you know, it's very it's no coincidence that the history of the Druids was all during the time of when, if you go from the biblical timeline or the timeline we're given today in regards to Christ, 1 BC, 1 AD, this is all during the time of the Druids existing. All the Druids were alive during this time. So this is not even talking about the Berber calendar. We're just talking about from what we were given based off of modern calendar from the Julian Gregorian calendar. All right. So it says, in this volume, we seek to present in as erudite a manner as possible the case for the Irish origins of civilization. We have been driven to publicly present the fruits of our lifelong inquiry into the subject, partly because we wish to correctly frame our efforts at historical revisionism. Our revisionism exists so that men might discover what has been hidden from them regarding history and religion. Only with correct knowledge of the past can men build a sane world fit to live in. Exactly. So we have to understand the truth about our past for us to actually be able to live in the present reality that is conducive for our overall long-term growth. That's the reason why you notice none of these so-called movements or so-called religious movements or whatever ever move or go anywhere, because they don't truly solve the true problem that's at hand. So everybody's actually going into circles. That's the reason why they say certain people, certain ones are going to start activating, waking up and realizing, what it is. And then eventually they're going to start linking up that frequency. They're going to just start linking up and doing what's required to be done. All right. So it says, only with correct knowledge of the past can men build a sane world to fit in. The man living his life in confusion, impotency, and fear is the man expertly trained to forget where he has come from. Exactly. So like our brother Miguel was explaining or saying about our people are suffering from post-traumatic syndrome of memory and stuff like that because of what we actually have went through. Well, what we're going through today in regards to poverty, man and his, and when I say man, I'm talking about man and woman. But how man today is living in one of the lowest state of his civilized sense, or as one of the lowest states since we have been so-called quote unquote living in civilization. How we're operating confusion and, like I said, more fear than we have ever seen on this planet. Back then, our predecessors used to go to war with no problems. Now today, people are so fearful of some of the little small, minute things, and this letting us know that we're breaking down genetically, on down to the micro level. We're breaking down, so these are something that we have to pay attention to. And then with that being said, you're forgetting who and what you come from, all because of the position that you have been placed in, which are letting you know it is time for us to return to the original position and not what we have been placed in from nefarious beings who don't have the same well-being, or looking for our well-being as we look for ourselves. So it says, from his precarious pedestal, his vision of the world is skewed and limited, and his fall into the void prevented only by externally provided stabilizers. Such a man remains existentially weak, like a fragile sapling in danger of breaking in a light breeze, let alone in a mighty storm. Alternatively, the strong man has a sense of where he has come from. Exactly. So strong people have a sense of where they come from. They're confident in that. It doesn't require much for them to, really get going, especially when they are putting the understanding of who they are as part of their repertoire, and that way, when they don't forget who they are, they give them a sense of existence, a sense of being. All right. So he stands upon his own feet and from a stable pedestal views both past and future with clear, fearless eyes. Exactly. He does not prevaricate when it comes to questions of justice. He hastens to challenge those who will strangle him in webs of ignorance, and works relentlessly to expose the criminality of those who have in ages past massacred his ancestors and presently threaten his hard-won physical and mental freedom. Bingo. The strong man knows his job is to build well upon the solid foundations laid by his ancestors. He wages perpetual war against those who attempt to burn down those foundations. Serving the will of his ancestors is a strong man's passion. The weak man, on the other hand, meekly heeds the commands of the deceivers bent upon using ancient occult knowledge to physically and spiritually undermine his brothers and sisters in the world. The strong, undefeatable man knows his enemies and how to correctly deal with them. He has studied their nature and the knowledge they perversely use as a weapon against him and all humanity. And that's the difference between the good and the bad, because the bad is weak. The good perseveres, understands where they come from, put their feet down the ground, and do what's needed for the good of all, or for the benefit of all. The bad or the weak, only doing what they can do for themselves. They ain't looking out for nobody else. They only live in the now. They ain't thinking about the past. They ain't thinking about the future. It's only about what they can get at this very moment off of whoever is back, whoever's a willing participant. All right. And that's what's going on today with humanity. Since we don't know, or since they don't know who they are, where they come from, they just rather be what is it? Pests amongst each other. Just continue to keep trying to take whatever they can without actually giving anything back. All right. And this is Proverbs 14:15 says, the simple-minded will believe anything, but the wise looketh well into everything he does. Absolutely. So wise people do research, they investigate, they utilize what we like to say their process of analysis. They like to utilize the scientific method. These are the things what wise people utilize or do. So therefore, we make sure that we're making the proper move, and our steps are, and we're taking our steps cautiously. Like I said, we're not just making steps just uneducated. Everything is done accordingly. All right, so our revisionist work is certainly controversial, and we acknowledge the resistance our inquiries will face. Fortunately, the disbelief and consternation those unsettled by our revelations mean nothing to us. We are not motivated by the lure of awards, flowers, and speeches. We are in dread earnest in our opposition to despots or despots who, on a daily basis, clearly demonstrate their contempt for truth, freedom, and justice. We stand against the tyrannous architects of the New World Order, rising from the ashes of an old order humanity is not meant to know existed. We oppose this new inhumane antinous order without fear or fright, and pity its makers for their psychosis and spiritual vacuity. Their days of infamy and oppression are coming to an end, and it only remains for us to dig deep the graves into which they will inevitably crash, along with their treachery and megalomania. To such work, we are temperamentally well suited. Certainly, we are not in opposition to religion as it is practiced by the sincere independent devotee. We do not seek to intrude into that space reserved for private worship, but we do stand opposed to the institutions that have inserted themselves in their mythology between the individual and his creator. We do not intend to offer any disclaimer and dedicate ourselves passionately to our free thought and analysis of the phantasmagorias placed before us by the institutions of the world. Our attitude is best expressed by the German historian Max Muller, who in 1878 wrote, "A comparison of all the religions of the world in which none can claim a privileged position will no doubt seem to many dangerous and reprehensible. But this I will say, that as far as my humble judgment goes, it does not entail the loss of anything that is essential to true religion, and that, if we strike the balance honestly, the gain is immeasurably greater than the loss. All truth is safe, and nothing else is safe, and he who keeps back the truth or withholds it from men is either a coward or a criminal or both." The Science of Religion. Pause. Absolutely. So for those of you, if you know the truth and you withhold the truth, you fit the description of a coward or a criminal or possibly both. What are civilizations made of? How do they come about? Are the foundations of our civilization strong or weak? Are these questions meaningful to modern men and women? Perhaps they are, perhaps not. In any case, when we examine the deep foundations of civilization, we discover something fascinating. We discover that our ancestors have based their lives upon instruction taken from the heavens above their heads. Pause. That's, brothers and sisters, what we call astronomy and astrology. So all of the ancients practiced astrology and astronomy. If you didn't know astronomy and astrology, you couldn't even be part of the priesthood. You couldn't even be considered a high priest. So for those of you who want to claim these titles, You can't be or can't even have these titles if you have not even been initiated into the arts of understanding these sciences, or it's not even sciences of the study of, which is still a science of the stars, which we consider our lords, the heavens above. The night sky was the veritable altar of ancestral man. All that occurred in it was reverently observed, recorded, and contemplated. Was this superstition or something else? And what could have prompted such devotion? Who first developed the idea to look up to the starry sky for instruction? Who first decided to map the rotating paths of the sun and the moon and to demarcate the zodiac's 12 signs? And was this exercise misguided waste of time and energy, or did it matter? Have human civilizations been founded and guided aright by those whose heads were well and truly in the clouds? Research into these questions and into heavenly matters reveals the zodiac to be a very mysterious and important phenomenon. Exactly. It was referred to as the celestial mystery school for good reason, since, strange as it may seem at first, the zodiac mirrors consciousness. Exactly. So, pause. So our reality, like they say, the saying, as above, so below. The heavens orchestrate what's taking place down here. And those who actually was able to read the stars or the heavens had a better chance in maneuvering out here in this human play or this human drama. The men who looked up into the night sky were really looking into themselves. The gnosis of the heavens is the gnosis of the soul. Civilizations erected upon zodiacal principles are erected upon the infinite ancestral reservoir of knowledge within man's own being. There are no stronger foundations. As the Hermetic model states, as above, so below. Our present understanding of the zodiac is far from that of the ancient magi. The keepers of the mysteries of the heavens knew the zodiac to be a projection of the human unconscious and not merely an external phenomenon. There was nothing contained in the heavens and zodiac that did not dwell within the mind of man. There was nothing in nature that was not part of man. Nature was not seen as having a separate or distinct life. Its life was man's life. Man's life was nature's life. Man and nature are one, and there is no separating the two. This is the sum of the lost knowledge of the ancients. Pause. So, like he said, man and nature are one. Without one, there can be no other. Without us, there can be no nature. Without nature, there can be no us. We were designed for nature. Nature was designed for us. So we have to understand it. We are a representation of what we see. All right. Like I said, there was no reason for this place if we weren't created. And that's the truth. All right. So it says the first people in recorded history to study the operations of the heavens and zodiac, and to understand the strange, and to understand the strange but intimate connections between physical and psychic energy were the Druids from the Fortunate or Blessed Isles. From these elders, the arcane archive of knowledge was surreptitiously appropriated by their enemies, the servants of darkness, whose biological and ideological descendants now rule the world. Pause. Now, what happened to the Druids? Many of you probably wonder. Rome got rid of them, or those who survived, had to go into exile, hiding. But Rome got rid of the Druids, and it's mighty. And it's no coincidence that right after that happened, they start accepting Christianity. So Christianity itself is the child of Druidism. Once again, Christianity is the child of Druidism. I know it's not something everybody want to hear. At this moment in time, we don't care. We really don't care. There's too much going on this planet right now that all the seals have been broken and open, and it's time for the priesthood to return. The high priests, the righteous ones, not the ones who are doing the evil, the good ones. And you actually have to get your body, mind, like I said, mind, body, and spirit, in order for you to encompass that position, and come away from the circular world. But we'll talk about that later. And so it says, so from those elders, the arcane archive of knowledge was surreptitiously appropriated by their enemies, the servants of darkness, whose biological and ideological descendants now rule the world. Despite coming under their vile, blood-soaked hands, it has not perished. It took birth in an age before our own, in places lost to history and time, but not to memory. The Gnosis is luminous and invincible. It is capable of enlightening those who approach with reverence and destroying those who refuse to do so. So the Gnosis, aka the knowledge, or like they say, is bright. Very bright, and it's blinding. But you have to revere the knowledge, the light. You have to come humble and have to come accepting of it, because the truth destroys many people who's not ready to accept it. Those whose hearts are not cleaned up, who haven't purified themselves, and who's not ready to truly honor what it is that they're going to seek or see, So it's not for everyone. Civilizations that lose their foundations fall as surely as men without souls. Such is the law of life. Man can learn this law and adapt to it, or he can ignore it. His choice determines his future. As the American philosopher Ayn Rand said, man is free to choose not to be conscious, but not free to escape the penalty of unconsciousness, which is destruction. Most historians accept that Egypt was a cradle of civilization, and that many cultural idioms and traditions come from there. What has yet to be understood, however, is the manner in which Egypt inherited its cultural elements from the lands of the Northwest. This fact is not known today because of the threat it posed to Rome and London, the Vatican and Crown, and to all those who have profited from the suppression of knowledge. After all, what is the subject of history? It is the study of the past, certainly, but it's also the study of man. It is the attempt by men to find out who they are by analyzing and reviewing what they have been. Even though scientific methodologies have a role within the subject of history, history is not science. Most importantly, students of history can easily be misled. A lot of problems and errors can come about when men attempt to study men. Moreover, the subject itself may be deliberately manipulated and skewed so that little is truly known. Paradoxically, it takes time to erase the fallacies that men entertain about the past. The proof for what we say is evident to those who have taken the time to think about history and what has been taught to them about the world of the ancestors. The subject of history is less than 200 years old. In that time, men have convinced themselves of the following suppositions, some of which have been regarded as irrefutable truths. There were no advanced pre-Diluvian civilizations. Early man was primitive, rude, and malevolent. The Mesolithic, megalithic sites throughout the world were constructed by unrelated races. The ambassadors of civilization were Greeks, Romans, and Jews. The various elements of civilizations were brought by the chosen people from east to west. The Jews were uniquely distinguished. They possessed a naturally religious and moral disposition and were truly a God-inspired chosen people. The Jews were slaves in Egypt and hard-pressed to preserve their unique identity and beliefs. Egyptian religion and culture had no effect on Jewish beliefs and lifestyles. The Hebrew language has no connection to the Egyptian. Monotheism was essentially a Jewish phenomenon. The Israelites were not given to idolatry. The Bible provides accurate accounts of historical occurrences. The Jews were Semites. Christianity is a Roman invention. Race mattered to the ancients. The word Aryan denoted race. All right. So that was all fallacies that they spoke of that the world has succumbed to. Happily, these preposterous fallacies are finally being revised. Constantine the Great, who was proclaimed emperor in Britain in the year 306 AD, and his bishops will have been very aware of the pagan myths and legends of the British Isles. Since the city of Rome is perfectly geometrically aligned with the sun door of Newgrange, Tumulus in Ireland, we can confidently conclude that they would have known about the antiquity of Ireland and about Druidic traditions and teachings. Therefore, we must begin to realize just how supremely important it was for those Antinous sorcerers from Alexandria, Constantinople, Rome, Burgundy, and London to plot the destruction of the original Druidic colleges in Ireland and throughout the ancient world. The Druidic system is thought to have its origin in Britain, from whence it was introduced into Gaul, Western Europe, and it is still customary for those who wish to study more thoroughly to pass over into Britain for that purpose. That's from Julius Caesar Gallic Wars. The Irish system is the oldest surviving complete codified legal system in Europe, with its roots in ancient Indo-European custom and not in Roman law, and is therefore the oldest surviving Celtic system of jurisprudence. Peter Beresford Ellis, The Druids. Well said, Brother McGarrell. If the sky above is endless, the below dirt under our feet is as well. The dirt you stand on, you can walk to the ends of the earth on a perpendicular plane. Absolutely, you're absolutely right. It's all connected. It's all connected. The traditions of the Irish people are the oldest of any race in Europe, north and west of the Alps, and they themselves are the longest settled on their own soil. And that's Edmund Curtis, A History of Ireland from Earliest Times to 1922. So as you can see, there's a lot about Ireland that they don't talk to us about. I just gloss straight on over. But we are going to uncover. That's why we're doing this great work. The vile Judeo-Christianity institution and its inhumane ideology would not have been able to endure if the pristine marvel of Irish Druidism remained strong and brought in the world of men. You hear that? To this very day, sacred prehistoric Druidic sites in Ireland and throughout Europe have been desecrated, tampered with, and even removed. Motorways continue to be constructed over ancient cairns and cromlechs. Stone circles continue to be leveled, and geometrically positioned monuments aligned to the constellations are replaced by shopping malls, housing estates, and corporate towers. The testimony of megalithic Europe and of Western origin of civilization continues to be deliberately obliterated, so that men are condemned to believe what they are told from official sources about their history and origins. The early craftsmanship and constructions from the Old Kingdom are the finest, and the quality of and dimensions of each monument reduces then on throughout the following millennia. There were a number of magnificent monuments that were made during mankind's early megalithic era. These include monuments as diverse as Stonehenge and Avebury in England, Teotihuacan in Mexico, Chocho in Manchuria, Hagar Qim in Malta, Baalbek in Lebanon, Ephra in Greece, Cusco in Peru, Giza in Egypt, and the Osirian at Abydos. Despite the geographic diversity of these monuments, they all share some common features. They were built in the prehistoric era. They were all associated religious centers. They were all made from megalithic architecture. They were mostly exquisitely carved and manufactured, often baffling so. And last but certainly not least, all of those monuments were utterly devoid of inscription. The granite megaliths carved into giant jigsaw puzzle at Cusco and the 1,000-ton bricks that were being used at Baalbek will stretch any modern stone mason's imagination and skills to their limits. These temples were not dedicated to any one particular monarch, nor to any one particular god. They were, instead, dedicated to the observation and the study of the universe. Ralph Ellis, Eden in Egypt. The earliest people inhabiting Celtic territory in the west of Europe of whom we have any distinct knowledge are a race without name or known history, but by their sepulchral monuments of which so many still exist, we can learn a great deal about them. They were the so-called megalithic people from Greek megas, great, and lithos in the stone. Dolmens are found from Scandinavia southwards, all down the western lands of Europe to the Straits of Gibraltar and around by the Mediterranean coast of Spain. They occur in some of the western islands of the Mediterranean and are found in Greece, where in the Mycenae an ancient dolmen yet stands beside the magnificent burial chamber of the Atreidae. Roughly, if we draw a line from the mouth of the Rhone northward to Varenga Fjord, one may say that except for a few Mediterranean examples, all the dolmens in Europe lie to the west of that line. To the east, none are found till we come into Asia, but they cross the Straits of Gibraltar and are found along the North African littoral and thence eastwards through Arabia, India, and as far as Japan. And that's Thomas Rollston, Myths and Legends of the Celtic Race, 1911. Judeo-Christianity, as we know it, is a creation of the solar cults of the ancient world. As an institution, it is a construct of the Antonists, the renegade outcasts of Egypt's 18th dynasty. After the termination of their dominion, the commanders of this powerful cult, seeking new empires, guided their people back to the place of beginning and subsequently set about erasing the archaic and sophisticated culture they found there. They overlaid their own corrupted traditions upon a more antique one that was soon forgotten. The story of this travesty exists within Irish and Celtic mythology. It has been concealed behind captivating drama-filled legends, some of which are still well known to Irish people and historians unaware of the hidden story that awaits to be revealed. As we show in Volume 2, the descendants of the cult of Aton, those chief desecrators of the Druidic tradition, have long since re-established themselves in lands outside Egypt. They formed new bastions of power in Tanis, Alexandria, Athens, Rome, Burgundy, Paris, and London. These new centers of operation replaced the older ones at Heliopolis, Memphis, Avaris, Giza, and Amarna. Although the locations of power have changed through the ages, the agenda of the depots have not significantly altered. Empire remains the name of the game. In place of an old dynasty and old dragon court, there stands a new one. A new imperialism arises from the ashes of one that fell. The Antonists also conquered Ireland, which, with its many monasteries and erudite monks, remained strongly Christian during the so-called Dark Ages. The solar cult emperors of Christianity, together with the various bishops appointed by them, have always worked overtime to make sure the Druidic roots of their religious beliefs are obscured. In concert, they have energetically set about obscuring the Druidic origins of their tenets and teachings. Editors and revisers were commissioned to do their tenets and teachings. Editors and revisers were commissioned to the heinous work. Most of them were hopelessly incompetent at the job, and so their final compilation, the Bible, considered so sacred, reads as it does today. The later efforts of editing and revising undertaken by Francis Bacon and his team did little to improve the travesty. Most of the hired scribes and editors knew that their precious little about the world beyond their scriptoriums. Unlike their masters, their knowledge of Palestinian, Egyptian, and Irish history and customs was paltry. They knew next to nothing about archaeology, geography, or ethnology, but that did not matter. The job of historical fabrication had to proceed and succeed despite the scandalously ravaged outcome. Our revisionist work is made somewhat more challenging because most Christians know very little about the true origins of their religion and do not realize that most of what they read and hear about from priests and potentates is pure fiction, with little to no basis in fact. Being not aware of how the Roman Church has fostered and unleashed upon their unsuspecting minds a battery of lies and fables in order to disguise the actual origins of religion. Nevertheless, we seek to show in the course of this work that Christianity and its so-called parent Judaism have their roots in Egypt and Ireland, and this holds true for the language and cultural idioms. This fact was commonly known the world over before the rise of the present impostor Roman hegemony. It was known in ancient times that Christianity, in its purest and most antique form, was nothing more nor less than Druidism from Ireland. The antique adulterated form of Christianity, Druidism, that existed in Ireland from the earliest times was a remnant of pre-Diluvian theology. It was based on the observance and veneration of the stars, of the sun and the moon, and the zodiac. It was from its inception a stellar religion. The Bible, therefore, is not only based on Druidic philosophy, it is a sidereal testament disguised as a biography in the history of physical personages who, for the most part, had no historical existence. How this antique Druidic philosophy was flagrantly appropriated and abused is a fascinating story that must be told. We are personally interested in the reasons why it was thought best to denude the ancient theology of its connection to the stars and why it was then foisted upon the world in its present contorted, preposterous form. To this day, the ancient mystery school subjects of astrology and Kabbalah, etc., are still taught to the elites within the Christian and Judaic colleges, to those of the highest caliber and lineage. This secret is not known by the lower rank, and file and great steps have been taken to downplay the astro-theological aspects of the major religions. Although innumerable books are now in circulation, attempting to shine light into Christianity's darker corners, the sidereal and Sabian connections have rarely been exposed. This kind of revelation is perhaps too controversial even to most revisionists, especially to those of the soft variety. Obviously, should this gnosis reach the ears of the masses, not much would be left of the vile edifice of Vatican-style religion. And a quote from Charles Squire, "It would appear probable that the Celtic state worship was what is called solar, all its chief festivals related to points in the sun's progress, the equinoxes having been considered more important than the solstice." And that's coming from the Celtic myth and legend. And I think because we have been here for 2.5 hours, I am not going to go into a next chapter. What I will leave off at tonight is that from what I spoke about in regards to how the spirituality works for me, the third house Pisces, and from the book I was given from the Bible from a fellow brother today, and then from what we just read, that the connection or what I'm being presented from that was the truth has to be spoken, and a wise man tells the truth. And as we see from our ancient past been hidden in obscurity by imposters who are supposed to be the heads of the religion of the world, they have done a horrendous job in speaking the truth. They have done everything but told the truth. And as my obligation and duty as an heir and descendant from the wise ones, it is my obligation and duty to bring to light what has pretty much have been shrouded in secrecy and mystery for so very long. Many men have come to placate these roles and positions without actually truly understanding the origins of these the astro-theological books that we've now come to call and accept as our holy books. There are many minds that have been part of orchestrating this great drama that we have succumbed to and we have to deal with on an everyday basis, until those who have that clean mind and pure heart do the proper investigative work for the good of all. And that requires a lot of sacrifice from the circular world, and to step yourself into the mind and the domain of an elder from our illustrious past, because they were fighting the same evil that we are fighting today. The only difference is that evil had an upper hand at that time, and it placed us in a position of forgetfulness that only a few of us can remember. And now the time has come where more is needed. And so the saying, each one teach one, many of us have that calling embedded within our DNA. And DNA operates or activates or vibrates via light and sound. So as I read or bring this information to your existence, you will start understanding that you are going to go through a transformation for you to step into your full, true, authentic self, back to the original position, which is the starting point for us going back to the time of the age of catastrophe. And this is not something, as we read, something that everyone is going to do or be capable of doing, because it requires great work. And great work is not something that everybody today wants to do. So I will utilize the saying, many are called, few are chosen, and they are chosen based off of their own inclination to do what it needs to be done, with many once again have ignored. And until man finally accepts his psychotic position, he will never be able to truly, fully heal and come out of this insanity or this quagmire that he have now embraced and had to accept as home. So with that being said, brothers and sisters, thank you for stopping by. Thank you, Brother McGarrell from the House of McGarrell. It is always an honor to hear you and see you, Noble. It's been a long time since I've seen and spoke to many of you. Once again, it's because we are living in a time where things are moving faster than we're used to, and we do have so much at our beck and call that's required for us to do, and that is all by design, to keep you from being able to step into the role that is needed for you. And like I explained earlier, for you to be able to truly go through these transformations, it requires isolation. You have to be still. To download, just like a computer system, the information that's required, you have to be still. That's why meditation is very important. That's the reason why I always keep explaining or try to say, make sure you're keeping yourself hydrated with water. You have to stay clean, pure with water. For those of you who are eating meat, animal flesh, you can't be eating that stuff. Like, you cannot be eating animal flesh and think you're going on the same page or the same place to those of us who know that it destroys the body. It breaks down your DNA. It's impure. We don't supposed to be eating. Now, I know that some of us are. I'm not saying myself, but I'm saying those of you who are, it's time for you to stop. Give yourself a fast, a 7-day fast from off of it, and then within that 7 days, you'll start noticing the change within your body. And then also too, for those of you who have been doing that fasting, from abstaining from eating those type of food, you're also going to have to start changing up the type of environment that you allow yourself to be around. So we for you to be part of what we say a higher spiritual or moral level, you're going to have to separate from a lot of the people who you call friends and family, because they will keep you in that level of that they're comfortable of seeing you at. Because the minute you start vibrating, becoming the light is wisdom, the knowledge, the truth. A lot of people can't withstand that light, and it's going to be very uncomfortable to them. And if you haven't done that work within yourself, it can make you feel alienated. But it's all part of the process. It's all part of the process for you to step into your true authentic position or role. And I'm only telling you this because I had to do it, and many others. And just like the ancients before us, they had to go through it. So none of this is new. Like they said, what they have done, so will you. So it's okay for those of you who are going through, who feel like you're going through a lot of trials and tribulation. Part of purifying yourself, you have to go through the fire. I know it's not fun. Trust me, I'm still going through it myself. But after you come out the other side, like a diamond, it's going to be all so worth it. It's going to be so worth it. You just got to hold on longer. You know, continue to keep doing righteous deeds and random acts of kindness. Continue to keep cleaning yourself up. Change that music you listen to. If you listen to that demonic, low vibration music, gotta stop listening to it. Imageries, videos, movies, stuff that looks scary, things like that, you have to remove this out of your psyche, because it's all part of keeping you in that psychotic mindset that modern humans are dealing with today, which is part of the problem. And that's why we're explaining that the origins of who we are from an Irish standpoint is going to also help teach us how to return back to the ways of our predecessors, who understood the stars, who revered the heavens, and we have to walk in their image, so therefore we can help step ourselves back in alignment according to the way how they done things. So with that being said, brothers and sisters, thank you again for your time. I love you. Take care of your family. Mostly take care of yourself, and do unto others as you want others to do unto you. And I see you, brothers and sisters, on the flip side. Tomorrow, I'm going to go ahead and go live earlier, because I know where I'm going to go ahead and start with. And I'm probably not going to have my introductions as long, but I do enjoy them because they kind of help set the tone and the pace for the live and the lesson. And then for those of you who know others who may be interested in this information, because it's going to get better, it's going to get very good, bring them to the channel. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Even if you don't understand what it is I'm talking about, still hit that like button, still subscribe to it, still share it, because a day and a time is going to come that the knowledge will start sitting in you, where it will start making sense. And knowledge doesn't come to you instantly, it comes to you in degrees. So it may not be your time today, it may not be your time tomorrow, but I promise you, a time will come when it is your time. And with that being said, I love you. Peace. I'm out.